Hello and welcome to Digimed TV. My name's David Wellbeing. It's my great pleasure to welcome you this afternoon. We've got a great lineup, so I'll get straight into it and just share a couple of slides with you to show what we've got in store. We're going to be talking today about the use of digital technologies for physical fitness, well-being and personal health management. And we do have some great guests lined up for you. We're going to begin in a few moments, and he's waiting in the studio at this very minute with Ben Wilkins, who's the CEO and founder of Good Boost. And he's one of the leading European experts in gamification applied to health management, in particular with people with musculoskeletal disorders. He's going to be followed by Wes Pooley, and this will be a question of, and now for something completely different, because Wes Pooley is a performance director at an organisation called Mudo, who are involved in the use of genomics and DNA analytics to advise on personal health programs, both in terms of exercise and also diet. We're going to follow on after Wes with Lucia Panesi. She's going to be talking about a European project called vCare, which uses many of the relevant technologies within this European project to help people to better manage their own personal health. Leon Eisen is the CEO and founder of Oxytone, and they have medical grade wearable devices which provide telemedicine solutions, but also provide the data and analytics to help people to be able to manage their own health better. And then we're going to finish up with a clinical psychologist, Ron O'Donnell. He'll be speaking to us from Arizona State University. So without further ado, I'm now going to invite Ben Wilkins to join me. Say hi, Ben. Good to see you again. Can you begin, for those who weren't able to join us the last time you were here, just to say a little bit about your background and how you came to become involved with gamification and digital health? Then we go into a bit more detail about Good Boost.
Sure, thank you very much, David. So my background is in musculoskeletal conditions, particularly when interventions delivered in the community. My background includes MSK research. I'm completing a fellowship researching the role of gamification for older adult exercise and rehabilitation, and I'm also an MSK clinical champion for Versa Arthritis, the leading charity in the UK for MSK conditions and arthritis.
So that's a wonderful pedigree, and as someone else who's involved with gamification, I'm afraid I can't compete with that. But you have both the clinical background and the knowledge and understanding of gamification. So for those who are probably not familiar with the detail of gamification and how it works in a health context, can you just say a bit words about gamification generally?
Sure. I mean, the easiest way to describe gamification in terms of a health context is someone doing a healthy behavior without realizing they're doing a healthy behavior. It's how do you create an activity that someone wants to do rather than told to do. That's probably the best way to define gamification. A lot of healthy habits and behaviors that are promoted through public health or by clinicians and GPs is all around the advice that this is something that's good to do for your health. The way that we can get people to engage with things spontaneously is to make it something they want to do. And a game doesn't necessarily have to be playing on an Xbox or a PlayStation. It can be as simple as rolling a dice and using the element of randomness and what number pops up to result in some activity or not doing something naughty instead. The reason why it's so powerful, when you look at the gaming industry, it's a $200 billion market. It's bigger than the film industry and music industry combined. Games are massive. And the reason they're so massive is because they create repeat behaviors that people want to engage in regularly. The role of gamification in health is how to identify those game mechanics that work really well to get people to repeat healthy behaviors or to avoid adverse behaviors in their life.
Yeah, so the games industry, I think, is a great example of how industries that have a technology background have been successfully not morphed, but have evolved into more serious uses, which is what the discipline of serious games is all about. So, just say a few words about forgetting gamification for a minute, just say a little bit about musculoskeletal disorders and what traditional therapies involve with musculoskeletal disorders.
So we know for musculoskeletal or MSK conditions, one of the most clinically effective and cost-effective interventions is exercise and physical activity. There is no doubt about that. The struggle is that some of the most inactive people on the planet are people living with a musculoskeletal condition, because the primary barrier that's cited is often pain, and pain is one of the main symptoms for anyone living with a musculoskeletal condition. So looking at that is, how do you find ways for people to be active, to either recognize that pain is quite a normal part of being active for people with an MSK condition, or finding ways for people to be active that modulates their playing. From my work in Good Boost, a lot of that has been focusing on aquatic activity or exercise in water. We know that when people are in water, it modulates their pain experience, so actually people can move in ways not possible on land. But when you look at the size of the challenge, there are about 1.3 billion people living with an MSK condition on the planet. A WHO publication last December came out to highlight there are 2.4 billion people on the planet in need of some form of rehabilitation. The majority of them are people living with an MSK condition. So this is not a minority. This is not a rare problem. This is, without a doubt, a really common condition and a huge challenge that we need to crack if we're going to support people to become more physically active to manage their MSK condition.
And so with MSK, can you just describe the origins of MSK? Is it something that happens at random, or is it possibly as a result of lifestyle behaviours and circumstances?
Musculoskeletal disorder is completely multifactorial. Some people are born with an MSK condition, but essentially MSK, as a nutshell, is anything that results in a change in muscles, joints, nervous systems that is usually has a symptom that relates to function. So people have to change the way that they move, or they experience pain as a result of that. But it covers everything from osteoarthritis or arthritis, which are the most common ones, through to back pain, which most commonly is because of non-specific low back pain, where there is no true identifiable origin of the pain source. So they're incredibly common. About a third of the global population will experience the MSK condition at any one time. So yeah, incredibly common, incredibly normal. But because of the pain that people experience, it's the key reason that people don't engage in physical activity. And that's why looking at routes such as gamification or working in environments which are low pain, like in water, is a really valuable avenue to explore.
And so with this condition, are there any kind of age demographics of this? Does it tend to affect people later in life, or is it pretty much spread over many different kind of age groups?
So the majority of people are definitely in the latter decades of life, from the 5th decade onwards, but it can affect anyone at any age as well. So yes, majority older adults, and things like MSK conditions such as sarcopenia, which is atrophy of the muscle, reduction in muscle mass that results in lower strength and lower endurance, is some of the key reasons for things like disability, risk of falls. And so one of the big challenges as people get older, and often as people get older, they become more inactive anyway. So their risk of disability increases, their risk of falls go up. Combined, this is one of the main reasons people end up going into a care facility early and not being able to live independently. So these are really important factors that can be negated through greater physical activity going on in people's lives.
I can understand how aquatic therapy is a good route to it, but when you're talking about people who are older in life, how do you persuade them, first of all, to go back to a swimming pool and engage in physical activities? Is it something that the doctor recommended, or what's the usual route to getting people back into exercising in a pool?
It's incredibly difficult. Forget the pool, just think of any physical activity. Yes, we know that healthcare professionals and clinicians have a really valuable role in creating those new recommendations and behaviours, but actually just being told by a clinician that you need to be more active doesn't necessarily result in new behaviours. It's not that people don't know better. People generally know better. They know that smoking is bad for them. They know that drinking regularly and often is bad for them. They know that not being inactive is bad for them. It's not that we don't know better, it's that we don't do better. It's not a knowledge deficit, it's a behavior deficit. And that's often because we don't do things which is in our long-term best interest, because the hard work we put in through things like physical activity, that pays off in the future. But kind of being lazy, that pays off right now. That kind of when people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, that avoiding that fall feels like 10, 20 years away. Not going into a care facility early, 10, 20 years away. But that exercise session, that getting up, being active when you'd rather be cozy on a sofa, you avoid that session right now. It's just, people are highly irrational in very predictable ways. And so it's about designing strategies to overcome that irrationality and how we can find ways to create positive behaviors, like through gamification, like through social contracts with friends, family, and peer. It's one of the strongest ways we can find to get people to be more active.
I think you've articulated it extremely well. I'm sorry you've had this preliminary conversation that's gone so long. I'm not really giving you a chance to describe what a good boost is. So maybe if I can explain very briefly that your therapies involve a use of a waterproof mobile waterproof tablet within a swimming pool with a personalised set of exercises, which are designed to motivate the person to do the exercises that are good for them. But the other thing which you mentioned to me in the past, and I think is the social aspects of it. The fact that people are mixing with other people with the same kind of condition, and in fact they look forward to these weekly exercises.
Yeah, the social connection, the informal social contracts that people build, because the opportunity to meet other people who are truly their peer, they experience similar challenges with an MSK condition, means that they form really tight bonds. And we find that in physical swimming pools where we work, or physical leisure centres, people often come back time after time because they create these really tight-knit social groups and social bonds. And that's the real driver to people coming back. We've got some really cool technology. People get personalized programs in the water and on land designed just for them. But actually, the real magic and the ingredient is having the time and options for people to have chats, have conversations, form those connections, because people want to come back the next week to check in with people, talk about things on the television, the weather, what they're doing on the weekend. That's the real secret sauce to get people to attend regularly. It's through social connections, and yeah, that's one of the key aspects.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time, Ben. We've got our next guest lined up in the studio. I can see him ready to come on now. So I'll add him to the stream and say hello, Wes. And thank you once again, Ben. And we'll keep in touch. I'm sure there'll be good opportunities to collaborate again in the future. Thanks very much for joining us.
David.
So, hi, Wes. This is your first appearance on Digimed TV, and by way of introduction, I'd just like to tell our audience how I came across your organisation and what my level of interest. Then you can introduce yourself and what your company does. I came across Mudo because I have an interest in and genomics and the role of DNA. And in fact, it was having a DNA sample analysed some 7 years ago that set me on the road to try and improve my own personal health management. As it happened, at the time, I had the DNA analysis done to see what my genetic origins were, because someone happened to remark that I looked Russian. So I used 23andme.com to find out whether I got any Russian blood in me. But it did transpire from that analysis that I got a bigger chance of getting diabetes 2 than the general population. And that was really what the motivation that started me on the personal health journey. So, Wes, would you like to begin by telling us about yourself and how you got involved with Mudo and what Mudo does?
Absolutely, and thank you very much, David, for letting me join you today on this call. So my name is Wes Pooley. I'm a performance director for Mudo Health. My background is I'm an ex-international professional rugby player. I then worked in teaching education, then moved into personal training, the business world behind working in gyms, and then strength conditioning. I was very lucky to work at Brighton and Hove Albion, England women's football, and I've worked in professional and international rugby as well. And then kind of along the way, I wanted to get my own genetics profile done, because when you're playing at a high level, you always want to know more about your body. And I found out that I got to a stickling point where I was still getting soft tissue injuries when I was playing, and I didn't understand why when I had all the medical support I needed. So I thought there must be some underlying factors there that I didn't know. So I found a company that did DNA profiling over probably 7 years ago now. And at that time, I met the gentleman named James Brown, who had his own company, did my profile, and then kind of worked with James to understand myself in a lot more in detailed terms. And back then it was a quite expensive and long process. He worked with the international teams and Formula One drivers and top rugby teams and individuals. And then I helped support him with getting him into football and some of the other contacts within rugby and other sports that I worked in. From there, because I helped him, we kind of started working together, because I had a performance background and rehab specialism. So I just started helping him with the programming and understanding how to help and support people who probably already had nutritionists and had medical help and had strength conditioning coaches, and we were just there to add value and add some consultancy around the genetic profile and how that would help and support them. We then met another kind of company who were very in the fitness space, in marketing and publishing, and had great routes to market, and basically decided they wanted to personalize health and well-being as best as possible using what we did. So basically we designed a commercial product, which we are now today called Mudo Health, where we're an app-based product that is what we call second generation genetics, really, because first generation genetics is DNA, but what we also offer is what's called epigenetics. So if you're not sure of what the difference is DNA is fixed from the day you're born to the day you die. It gives you a lot of really good information about yourself and a lot of understanding. And then what we do is we provide scientific backed research with actionable interventions with every outcome we have, so that people then understand if they have a predisposition to something, what can they do to make that improvement? So if they have problems with sleep, what could the reasons be with that? If they have problems with their health, what could be the reasons with that? We do not step into the disease diagnostic area, and we do not step into ancestry. We're firmly in the health and well-being space around nutrition, exercise, health, vitamin mineral deficiencies, and then we look at other key areas like sleep, stress, mental health, anti-aging, gut health, heart health, immunity, virus risks, and stuff like that. And the aim is just to help people understand and make recommendations, so they can design an action planner through our app that can be small, simple steps, so they can make those changes and then hopefully turn them into behavioral change and lifestyle habits moving forward. And then what we also do, what makes the second generation, is what we call epigenetics. So epigenetics is measuring the gene expression change over time. So simply is measuring your internal health, and we do that through what's called chronological age against biological age. And the reason we do this is because if you look at some athletes, they may look very, very healthy on the external, and we're happy to say, oh, you look really young, but actually their internal clock is actually not that way. So when I did mine, I was at the age of 35. I was actually 40. I was 5 years older biologically than I was chronologically. And then from my results, I've learned how to understand my body better. So I understood what my vitamin mineral deficiencies were at a genetic level and what I needed to change in my diet, nutrition and supplementation. I found that I didn't process carbohydrates very well, which was causing kind of issues for me within my gut and also within my recovery and my inflammation. And then it allows you to actually measure what you're doing. So the idea is, if you do a DNA kit, the answer is, if you start making those changes, how do you know those changes are actually working? And that's what epigenetics does. And that's why we're different from everyone else, because we offer this service at a commercial and global level. And then you can retest this over time, every 6 months to a year, or if you want to do it more as an athlete, you might do it every 3 months after you've instilled some change and put some actions into place.
So just to explain for those people who haven't done it, and I should say that I'm in the process of trying out your service. I've already sent off my sample, and I've got the mobile app downloaded, so I've got an idea of what it will do, and I'm just waiting for my results back. So can you just explain a little bit about what people, how people go about it, and what they will see on the mobile app?
Yeah, of course. It's really simple. It's saliva. So we're basically known now as kind of the new health screening model, because in the health screening world now, you tend to normally have a blood test. The problem is blood tests, they're quite intrusive and they don't necessarily give you everything you need. And then you've got the other medical screening where you might go and get your height and your weight and your body mass done and don't really give you the action points and really specific individual help that you would then need to actually start making change. Whereas we then individualize everything through literally a saliva tube. So the kit's sent to you direct. You do your saliva, you put it back in the prepaid envelope, it goes to lab. Our app then will let you know that we received your sample, and then 2 weeks later you would have your results from a DNA perspective, and then it's another few weeks after that to get your epigenetic results, just because it's a bigger process and takes a little bit longer. And then from the app, from a DNA perspective, as I said in a little bit earlier, you're looking at the core key areas of things like nutrition, vitamin mineral deficiencies, supplementation, health and exercise. And then also you're looking at the health insights areas, which I was saying were things like sleep, stress, anti-aging, mental health, immunity, gut health, injury prevention, and areas like that. So what it does is it tries to help you understand how your body functions from a genetic level, and then what actions to put into play from that. So within the app, you get an outcome, the genes that we're looking at, the result that we give you, then we give you the recommendations, and we also then give you the references proven by science. That we have 2 science teams that work on our science to then basically say this is where we've got this from, and these are studies that we have actually done personally as well.
So just so I understand it completely, so from the sample that you get, you're not only able to analyze the DNA part of it, which is essentially what you, as you said, it's something you can't change. It's what you're born with. That sample also tells you a little bit about the life that you've led up to that point, and what the consequences of your lifestyle are in relation to what your biological age is compared to your physical age. And then the epigenetics part of it gives you advice on not necessarily how you can turn back the clock, but how you can make a difference through diet and the right kind of exercise. Is that right?
Yeah, so you look at DNA, so DNA is fixed, and then you think of it like a valve. So basically your epigenetics is if you pour good things in the top of it, and then you have good things coming out the bottom. So negative things like poor sleep, high stress, poor nutrition, no exercise, you get like a negative expression at the bottom. So it's basically how can you use your lifestyle and the environment that you're in to basically manipulate what's called your methylation of your gene to then help you actually slow down or reverse your aging process over time.
Yes, you mentioned that having sort of a 6-month gap in between doing samples, so you can see the effect of whatever regime that you put in place. Presumably, though, once you've done the epigenetics and you've provided some advice on nutrition and on exercise, would this not also affect the traditional vital signs, such as your blood pressure, your body mass index, and the other kind of indicators of your personal health. Is that how it works as well?
Yeah, obviously from our epigenetics, we also ask you questions when we do your samples. We also track through the app all your different trackers that you may use, so sleep, stress, all those different areas. And obviously, you know, if you're making changes to your nutrition or you're trying to be healthier, and say you may be overweight, then obviously if you put these things into play, you're hopefully going to lose weight. Therefore, your BMI, your heart rate, you know, all your other stats will hopefully change as well alongside. So they're the outcome of obviously making those changes to become healthier.
Yeah, so you can actually see those changes over time within your app. You don't have to wait until you get the next sample back to see what changes you make. It manifests itself in the mobile app that shows you some of these key indicators, so you can measure your progress at the same time.
Yeah, I say we're mainly looking at your age as your indicator, because we're, as we say, our aim is longevity. So how can we help you, you know, slow down or reverse the aging process over time? So that's our key indicator, and all the other bits just play into that main indicator. We have got a lot more modes opening up by the end of this year within epigenetics to give more information around that. And I'm sure everyone's aware that obviously it takes time just to build the research and make sure that, you know, what you're showing is understandable to everyone.
So your origins are, to begin with, you're an elite athlete, or you've been an elite athlete, and I can see how this particularly would be valuable to some of the other elite athletes in whatever sport they are. Particularly these days, nutrition and the right kind of exercise are vital, I guess, to peak performance. But your aim really is to go into a mass market. So this could be something that could be used by almost anyone over time.
Yeah, I mean, we have all clientele from lots of different remits and different ages, and obviously male and female as well. So we do have a lot of the aging population that actually have taken more consideration into our product now, because we're looking at reversing your aging process. So obviously that alludes to everyone. We were, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, very heavily in fitness and the sports industry. We're no longer in that industry really, and we obviously do work with companies in that industry, and we do support them. And we continue to do research and stuff around those areas. However, we work heavily in the corporate industry. Obviously, anti-aging is a big thing through longevity, but we work with different industries, from medical to corporate to sport to fitness to clinics, chemists, pharmacies. We've got global partners working with governments. We're doing 2 massive longevity studies at the moment with the University of Singapore and the Singapore government with Dr. Brian Kennedy, and we're also doing a massive longevity study with King's College London with Dr. Richard Xiao, based all around corporate health and well-being. So we're out there working, and as you're probably aware as well, we were on the BBC Click a couple of weekends ago, which was all about the reversing the aging process and how it works and why it's important.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic, and I thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. I can see Lucia Panese is my next guest. She's in the studio. I'm sure she's listening, even though she hasn't got a camera and a microphone switched on yet. But I'm going to invite her into the studio now, and say thank you very much for your time. And I hope very much that you'll join me on the next broadcast, which is on nature or nurture, which is very much focused on genomics, genetics and epigenetics, as you described, but we can go into a bit more detail on that program. But for now, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, and I will welcome in Lucia. Thanks very much, Wes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, David.
Hi, Lucia. Yes, welcome again. It's going to be a bit of a habit, this is, isn't it? I think it might be useful to just play a clip from the V-Care program that you sent me. I've edited video just to have a short excerpt of it, because it contains some of the elements that we are going to talk about. So I'll start playing it now.
Finally, context or data services do not interact directly with the patient, but feed the knowledge layer with data. These are background services required for smart home data acquisition, like activity recognition or localization, and for the acquisition of vital parameters such as the heart rate.
In the current example, the coaching service for intelligent notifications triggers a notification through the avatar-based user interface to inform Mr. George about a scheduled physical activity session according to his pathway. First, an acoustic sound occurs to get his attention. Mr. George can either acknowledge the notification manually on the screen or verbally. Show me the notification, please. The avatar greets him and informs him about the scheduled physical activity session.
Hello, Mr. Georg. You have a physical activity session planned for now. Please select one of the aerobic trainings that you want to do: treadmill, cycling, or fast walking.
Mr. George can select his preferred exercise either manually on the screen or verbally. I want to go cycling. Finally, the virtual coach acknowledges Mr. George's selection.
Cycling it is. Great choice. Please wear your Fitbit during the exercise so that I can keep track of your heart rate.
After a warm-up phase to match his heart rate to the targeted heart rate defined in his pathway, Mr. George starts his cycling training session. During the training session, Mr. George's vital signs are monitored through the Fitbit device and sent to wearable's knowledge layer. The monitored vital signs are analyzed immediately by the reasoner based on a defined clinical rule set and threshold parameters specified by the physicians during the pathway initialization phase in the professional portal. In case vital sign parameters go beyond the defined limits, the reasoner triggers the avatar to inform Mr. George about this instance and provides suggestions on how to cope with this situation.
Mr. Georg, I noticed that your heart rate is too high. Please lower your training intensity.
Mr. George recognizes the avatar's feedback and reduces his exercise pace until the training session is finished. After Mr. George finished his training session, the virtual coach presents a summary of his performance on the tablet screen.
Mr. Georg, your workout today was very good. Keep on doing your workouts regularly. You will feel much better by doing so. Well done. Here are some stats about your performance today. You cycled for 30 minutes and covered a distance of 7.5 kilometers. Your average heart rate was 140 beats per minute. This was your third workout this week. Great job.
So I'll stop the video there, Lucia, because I think it gives an idea about how it works. So it obviously includes elements of gamification. Can you just say a little bit about the background to VCare project and where you are within the cycle of the project?
Yes, thank you, David. So VCare is a Horizon 2020 project, which started a couple of years ago. And actually, the objective is to create this environment with the virtual tutor to offer some personalized caring services at home, of course, under medical supervision. The patients that are targeted in the project are both neurology and cardiac patients. The neurology patients are mainly post-stroke and Parkinson's, and the cardiac patients are patients with heart failure. So within these two target groups, the technology of the system is the same. Of course, there are different clinical pathways which are, embedded in the system to offer the right assistance and the right care support that these two populations of patients need. In the project, we are now facing the phase of starting. So it's a very exciting phase actually of starting the tests with the patients. So actually, the whole system has to be tested in a real life environment. So we will see a little bit everything that goes from technicalities, of course, but also what is, always interesting me, of course, is how patients respond in terms of motivation, in terms of adherence, so how they like the system and what kind of feedbacks we collect there. What unluckily was not in the video, which is actually our part. Of course, there is some gamification in terms of feedbacks, but also in terms of choice of activities, as we saw. Unfortunately, what was not in the video is our part, which are games, once again. So with this project, Imaginary is building Rehability Cardio. We've been talking about Rehability Neurology version quite often. In this project, we are developing the exercises for the cardiac patients. So some very interesting exercises where, of course, same as we saw here with the cycling example, we have to take care of the heartbeat of the patient. So patients are wearing this bracelet, which is measuring the heartbeat. And in case we have even to stop the games if they are too stressful for the patient. So patients need to be monitored quite closely. What we're also doing is developing or enhancing the cognitive side of several games that we have already, so that we can do some very interesting cognitive stimulation in terms of multiple exercises, for example, concurrent stimuli and concurrent triggers that we offer to the patient, where they have different things sometimes to do at the same time, so that we offer also an interesting cognitive support.
And one of the things about this approach to rehabilitation is that you're able, through the use of games and the feedback that you get from the technology, you're able to evaluate improvements and deteriorations in the performance of the patient. The question I have for you is that clearly with rehabilitation, where compliance is often an issue, these kinds of technologies can help people to recover in a home environment with the support of their family and the aid of technology. But how do you feel about, if you like, non-clinical pathways? In other words, the general public. I could see this as being quite an incentive to encourage people to exercise who are not on a clinical pathway. So, do you think there's opportunities to consumerize this, if for want of a better word?
Well, definitely yes. Of course, I mean, the system now is being developed based on clinical pathways. So there should be some substantial differences or changes made to the system, because it is one thing to be monitored strictly by medical staff. So receiving those kind of stimuli in the right range, in the right variations that you need, and being monitored. And it's very different if you do it on your own. So, of course, it's not risk-free, because even if you have people who are not patients, so people who want to keep fit and have a proper lifestyle, healthy lifestyle, it's not risk-free, because if you risk to train too much, for example, you could have some consequences out of your exercise. So I think there needs to be a sort of balance, probably taken up by some modules like the Reasoner, which takes a sort of user profile, medical clinical user profile into consideration, and then still try and monitor at least the most obvious risks and the most frequent risks, probably, and keep you under some sort of control, because if it's very different if you go and run on your own, or if you use a technology which was produced by someone who then bears the responsibility of what happens to you. Well, consumerizing it is definitely fascinating, but it's not straightforward, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. It's not straightforward, and this is one of the dangers, I think, or one of the barriers to the implementation of what could be really life-changing applications of technology that could improve the general health of the general public. But as you say, if I go out running in the morning or go on my walk, there are risks associated with that. And I guess the issue, and the same would be if you watch the advertising on television for products like Peloton, where you see people who already look supremely fit exercising actively on a bike under the supervision of a remote trainer. There is no medical guidance or supervision on that whatsoever. So people undertake that at their own risk. But it seems to me that if you've got something like the VCare project with exercise bikes and treadmills and technologies which are commonplace, it gives you an opportunity to give people starter exercises which benchmark their capabilities. So if you like, you begin by looking at a person's normal heart rate, giving them something which is simple and basic, and then being able to, if you like, evaluate their current position, and then provide ways in which they can increase the physical activity and at the same time monitor the benefits to their personal health.
Well, yes, of course, you should have sort of call them health profiles or clinical profiles behind the lines, which have to do with your own body and with your own age and fitness level and so on. And then, of course, as usual, start small, and then you can bring the people, I almost said patients, bring the people to increase their endurance or their strength or whatever, bit by bit, same as you do with a personal trainer in the end. What I don't know is the cost of the operation, because if you think that you want to make it very interesting, actually you need a lot of things like the bracelet and then the tablet or whatever, the camera that reads your joint, maybe same as the treadmill and so on. In the end, I ask myself, are we transforming your flat in a gym? So should it be something that maybe you have in a smaller scale at home, or with you, because the bracelet and so on are working also if you go for a walk or a run in the park, of course, and then keep some other things like the treadmill and so on, maybe for the gym, where you can add some levels of improvement, or should we do it all at your home? Now I ask you.
Well, no, you've asked me the question. I can answer it very simply. I think is that no, you don't want to transform your home into a gymnasium, and there are bits of technology that you can use which are probably more suited to a home environment than an exercise bike. Not everyone can afford those kind of things, of course.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
If you look at one of your flagship products, Rehability, with a device which plugs into your television, so it's not obtrusive, it doesn't turn it into a gym, but you can imagine a scenario where people could use a device like Rehability with their television, giving them exercises which are enjoyable, but at the same time not only recording the exercises and giving them motivation to improve, but also collecting a lot of data about personal health and health improvement.
Yes, definitely. Yes, actually, we have a version already, which we call Light, which is meant for active aging. So where you have people and not patients using it. And it has some algorithms behind the line which change actually some you want to call it levels of difficulty of the games, which are, in my opinion, always, or they have to be, a multidimensional concept, because a level of difficulty does not mean necessarily that the game becomes quicker, for example. It might mean that you have more stimuli. It might mean that you have more distracting elements. It might mean that it lasts longer. So the difficulty is to be understood in very many different directions. And this we have already. So actually, it's something that makes a lot of sense. And then you would have a baseline of some progress. And well, yes, it makes sense. And you might remember also we did some sort of testing in Singapore some years ago, where actually the city was interested in getting elderly people out of their homes, to make them use games and measure some sort of parameters around the games. Sometimes while they were queuing to play the games, but sometimes also while playing the games. So this can be used also in a sort of formal context.
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of potential for this, and we're in a very exciting time at the moment, with some great opportunities. So I can see suddenly that we're out of time for our discussion, but I can see Leon Eisen waiting to join us in the studio. So I'm going to bring Leon in now and say hello to him and say thank you once again, Lucia. I'm sure it's not the last time we will see you on Digimed TV. I'll speak to you again soon. So yeah, take care.
Thank you,
Lucia. Hi, Leon. How are you?
Hello, Dave. Hello, David. Very good, thank you.
Good.
Happy
And
to be here.
are you in Israel again at the time?
Yeah, I'm still in Israel. Yeah, I'm still in Israel. I'm planning to get back to Connecticut, the US, this fall.
Okay. And how is Israel managing with the coronavirus at the moment?
Currently, there is no coronavirus anymore here. Everything is open, so I think every day we have about 20, 15 new cases. And we have some full immunity.
So the vaccination program in Israel, are pretty much everyone vaccinated now?
Everyone, almost everyone. So we don't have this problem, so we're back to the conventional life.
Okay, so now because we're running a bit short of time, can you just sort of briefly tell us a bit about oxytone and where it fits in this spectrum of wearable devices, and what we're likely to see in the future of oxytone?
Yeah, so Oxytone, not a wearable device company anymore, because we did everything what we wanted to do. We're just adding more vital signs, and we're using wearable devices only to generate medical grade data. And the main difference between medical grade wearable devices and something like Fitbit or Apple, that it's for different applications. And we pivoted from wearable medical devices towards a totally new innovative business model called clinical reporting as a services. So we offer the full platform that enables to monitor patient continuously, more than 10 vital signs at the same time, synchronously every second. So you can apply the pattern recognition technique, and you can generate report on patient on demand. And we have 4 levels of reports. We have ad hoc notification report that enables 3 levels of emergency levels inside. And we have the global report for weekly report or monthly report that enable artificial intelligence tools that physician could apply and have the baseline of the patient and any deviation from the baseline. So simply, for example, any patient with chronic and complex diseases could come to general practitioner, get monitoring. So general practitioner gives him devices, connect to the platform. General practitioner could license this platform for every patient and pay annual payment, for example, £300-400 for using this platform. And general practitioner could give this to the patient go home, get screened for the night, for a week, or for 30 days, and then bring back, get back to the general practitioner, and general practitioner has all these data like a pattern and reports on his interface, and decide about the patient status and dynamic status of the patient. That's most important. So actually medical wearables is just tools to generate medical grade data, but it should be integrated with subjective data like screening, like questionnaire, and altogether it could be integrated with population health data and generate very comprehensive report that enable to identify patient risk level and understand what happened to the patient. And actually, one of our business model includes selling reports as it is. So, for example, you have the company, you're looking for to screen your employees on stress, on sleep apnea, on post-COVID complications, something like this, if your employer has absence on the workplace. And you can just ask us to make this screening, and you have the full report about what happened to patients, and you can buy 10 reports, 50 reports per month, depending on your employees number, and you can understand exactly what kind of productivity you can expect from your employees.
Oh, okay, I understand that. So it's software as a service, basically.
It's a little bit more complicated because software as a service, so you have the software and you generate some services or something like this. Here we're talking about report as a service.
Yes.
It's more advanced. It's a more advanced approach.
Yeah. So it gives you insight into the data. So is it specific to the Oxycone wearable, or would it be something that could interface with any kind of medical grade wearable?
Our platform has the integration capabilities for about 400 devices. So actually, if patient has some comorbidities, like, for example, like diabetes or some kidney disease or something like this, we can add more devices. And our platform and analytics engine enables to build the pattern from taking simultaneously spot check data and continuous data. So you have very comprehensive report. You have all derivatives that explain how our heart is working, how our kidneys is doing, how our glucose is doing. So you have the comprehensive report. And most important, you have correlative pattern that you can apply. And we launched this a couple of months ago. And now we can say that we validated this business model. It works very well. And we are going to continue with this.
Oh, that's great news. I'm pleased to hear that you're having these kind of developments, and I can see how the data generated from that will create win-win relationships of many different kinds between the suppliers of the technology, corporate organizations wanting to benchmark stuff, and of course the individuals. And I can see also that it's not necessarily a service which is directed entirely at people with pre-existing conditions. It can be applied to anyone who wants to be able to monitor health more effectively.
You raised very interesting question, because this is what we are doing. What we are going what kind of market we are going to penetrate, and this is a pharma market. Because today you take the pill, and this pill is it's written there. It's not good for pregnant women, for example. So that's all. That's all. So it doesn't matter what kind of condition, precondition, you don't know. You have some generic medication that you take, I take, but actually our body response is different for the same medication. And how do I know what my body responds? Why do I have to take 2 pills and you have to take only 1 pill, for example? Who knows? So you check it empirically. But actually what we offer to our partners, and we start working on this project, that we offer to understand tiny preconditions and how these tiny preconditions influence or affect your body response on a specific medication. So you can build a library of preconditions. I would say sub-conditions. So, for example, this medication is dedicated to low blood pressure, okay? But it works differently with different people. And you have the library, what kind of precondition influence or affect the action of these medication, specifically on you.
Yeah, I think these are wonderful developments with a huge amount of potential to address some of the needs we've got today. I'm sorry that we've run out of time, but I'm leaving limited time for our next guest, which is Ron O'Donnell. So I'll say thank you again, Leon, and I'll
thank you very much.
Ron into the studio. Thank you very much, Leon. Speak to you again soon. So hello again, Ron. I'm sorry that we've overrun a little bit, but can you just, by way of introduction, just say a few words about yourself and your background? You're muted, Ron.
I'm Ron O'Donnell, a clinical psychologist and clinical professor with Arizona State University. I'm in a doctoral degree program professor training a new workforce for integrated healthcare, having our graduates work with the primary care physician to address all types of behavior change issues in primary care settings. I also am a consultant and trainer for physicians and nurses in China, South and Southeast Asia for the past 10 years.
So can you just say a little bit about the problems related to lifestyle conditions and behavior change?
Well, quick question. Do I tend to do a short slide set presentation in this time slot or no, David?
What you can do if you would like to, Ron. I think you can share your screen if you like. You want to try that?
Yes, thank you.
Once Ron is loading his slides, it'll be a good way of...
About 5 to 8 minutes, Dave, then we can do discussion afterwards. So
yeah, sure.
How do we take our old bad habits, watching TV, eating unhealthy foods, and add new habits? That's the challenge we're facing, both in physical activity, our topic today, and how technology is critical to that. And the challenge is the evidence in aggregate is not good. Evidence does not show that our efforts to promote healthy behaviors are effective overall. One of my colleagues, Richard Cohns, recommends let's just not even worry about that because we can't change behavior. Let's start prescribing statins across the entire population as a solution to cardiovascular disease. So the evidence to date, we can find individual studies, but in aggregate, we're still not there in terms of having the right interventions, the right technology to change health behaviors. I like to share my health profile, as you know, David, and I think I represent the population. I'm 63 years old. I have a good BMI, but I've had chronic health problems over the years, sleep apnea for 20 plus years, hypertension diagnosed last year, now with medication controlled. And exercise, I'm a big exerciser. I'll cover that in the next slide, but I use technology daily, multiple times a day. My wireless...
I'm not seeing your slides, Ron.
Let me check here again. Make sure I'm sharing my screen.
I maybe need to switch to this view.
Let me check here. Oh, I had to allow here.
You should be able to share. I think we have shared with other guests.
Yeah, that's unusual. Let me try again.
At the moment, I'm just seeing the two of us on screen.
Okay, how's this? One moment. Let me check.
It's not. Oh, hang on. No, that is. No, that is just.
Okay, I'll go without the slides then.
Yeah. I was following you very well. You were describing very well. So I think the pictures are there in our head. So carry on, Ron.
So in my case, I use technology for all of my health problems. I use a Bluetooth blood pressure monitor device. I use a Bluetooth weight scale. I use my Apple Watch and my Apple Health apps, as well as other apps for my exercise and nutrition. And I'm an outlier, though, because I exercise almost every day of the week, pretty moderate to high intensity. I'm a road runner, a trail runner, road biker, mountain biker. I love swimming, weightlifting in my house now. So I've been doing exercise like that probably for 35 plus years. And it's become a habit, meaning I don't think about it. I don't, debate, should I exercise today? No, every day I'm going to exercise. It's a matter of what time of the day, based on my busy schedule, my meeting schedule, based on where I'll go. Will it be around the house quickly? Will it be out to a local park? So for me, I'm an outlier. I'm evidence that you can make physical activity a habit in your life. And I want to talk about some emerging ideas I think that we need to incorporate more into our health technologies. I'll begin with a big challenge. I look at my work in Asia. In China, physicians there might see 70, 80, 100 plus patients per day. They don't have time to give nutrition or physical activity advice. They can promote an app maybe briefly, but there is good news. There's a recent line of research showing very brief interventions, literally 30-second interventions that physicians can use during a routine office visit for things like smoking cessation, where they simply will give the patient a warning. If you don't stop smoking, these bad things will happen. They'll give them advice to reduce or cut down smoking, and a resource. That can be done quickly. It's effective. It's actually reduced smoking in a couple of studies in China and Europe. So I think incorporating brief interventions for physicians and nurses that are very short, 30 seconds or so, that should be something we add to our health technology, our app, etc. The other trend we're seeing is in habit theory being used to drive behavior change. So you might have heard of some popular books, Atomic Habits, Habit Stacking. They're selling millions of copies because they're based on how do you make new habits in ways that are simple, easy, intuitive, right? We use many theories in psychology of changing habits that include motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral therapy, self-determination theory, the trans-theoretical model. The good news is they're all evidence-based. The bad news is they're often long and complex. And if I'm trying to train a layperson health worker in Thailand, I need something that's very simple and effective. And I think these new habit change models are on the mark there. They focus on, first of all, look at the layers of habit change. We have the actions you take. I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day. You have the processes, how you're going to arrange to do that. I'll do it during my lunch break. And then your identity. I'll become a walker. I'll become an exerciser. Most interventions start with the goal first. I'm going to walk 10,000 steps. We should be starting with the identity. I'm going to be a walker. I'm going to be an exerciser. And then the emerging habit change models really posit habits are often driven by cues in your environment. A negative habit, you get home from work after a long day, you see your refrigerator with a nice cold beer there, you want to have that. You see your couch, you see your big screen TV and remote control, you plop down, there you go. What if instead you walked in the door and you had the night before laid out on the chair right in front of the door your exercise shoes, clothes as a cue? These kind of things can be highly effective and simple to use cues to interrupt bad habits and add new habits. I'm simplifying things for the course of this short talk, David, but you get the idea. It's a matter of finding existing habits we're already doing. Habit stacking. Every day I brush my teeth automatically. I don't think about that. If I want to add a new habit, I might say I'm going to start by taking a short walk after I brush my teeth for 5 minutes around the yard every day. That's the way to start a small new habit tied to an existing habit that increases the chance of being successful. And the good news is we're seeing more and more smartphone apps in terms of technology incorporating this technology. I came across one called 10 Top Tips app developed by a colleague of yours in the UK, and I'll share that with you after the talk if you want to share the resource. The very popular app in the United States, Noom, N-O-O-M, is hugely popular. It also incorporates this kind of habit change model into its app design and function. So we're finding ways to improve habits. James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he has different rules for adding good habits and deleting bad habits. The rules include make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. And these are all things that are now being incorporated more into health technology apps. I think that's good news because it's much more simple and intuitive than what we've been doing in the more complex models of behavior change. So those are the points I wanted to cover today, David. I want to just give you some idea of what's exciting me. And in summary, finding very brief interventions for busy doctors and nurses to use, ideally with the app they can prescribe in the same visit, right? Having our behavior change experts, psychologists, clinicians, other folks who are supporting app use begin to move towards models of habit change that are much more intuitive, easy, and I think successful in the long run than our more traditional, complex ways of behavior change. So I'm excited about these things. I'm using them in my practice right now, my work in Asia. I'm working on these with my students, introduce them to these topics, and I'll stop there for a second and take any questions you have, David.
Yeah, well, more comments and questions. I was feeling increasingly not paranoid, but increasingly I could identify with some of the behavior change and triggers, because just as an example, saying something about myself here, but I used to have a trigger whenever I bought petrol at the garage and I went in to pay for the petrol. I would see the chocolate bars beside the counter and I would always buy myself a bar of chocolate. And this, as you say, it becomes a habit and it's a bad habit. And there are many other things that I do in my life today which are exactly the same. Something will happen. Maybe if my favorite football team loses, I'll console myself with a beer, or maybe if they win very well, I console myself with a beer. And it's this kind of habit, this kind of trigger of habits, very important. I'd just like to finish off with one question though, and that is, you were talking about these very short interventions that doctors can make with their patients. There are a lot of applications which have use artificial intelligence and virtual coaches built into the app to give advice. I can't help but think in my own mind that we do need to combine human empathy with all of this. It's not sufficient to simply rely on AI and a disembodied voice giving us advice. We get the best effect if we can combine the best of technology with human empathy. So I'll leave you that with that question. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's critical. And just yesterday I came across an article I used in one of my class lectures about studying physician and patient communication patterns, comparing Western society with Asia, China, Taiwan in particular. And they found, as you might be aware, in many Asian countries, it's more patriarchal directive style. The doctor tells the patient what to do. And that often doesn't work because patients often don't want to, do these new things. And we need a way that doctors can be empathic and connect with the patients using a patient-centered approach in the USA that also fits with the culture of Asia, right? So I think these new approaches I'm talking about, they go in that direction. They have the physician be more aware of the need to get the patient's opinion and true values and beliefs briefly, and then assign an intervention the patient agrees upon. Shared decision making is a nice way of looking at that research supporting that. So there's a need, and there's growing in an article they did research. They're showing physicians are beginning to, or I shouldn't say that, the patients are beginning demanding more empathic approaches by physicians in Asia. In the past, they would accept being a passive recipient of direction. Now, because a number of factors, they're not happy with the way they're being treated. They want more empathy. They want more understanding for the doctor to help guide them with the intervention. So I think you're right on target. And it's nice seeing the data support that, especially in my work that looks at bridging the gap from Western to Eastern medicine.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point to conclude on, because I think culture is very important in how you address these issues. The guest that I had this morning was talking about her experience of high pressure work in Asia and how that led her eventually to spend 4 years in a monastery in Myanmar. learning how to meditate and become mindful. But she said something I think quite significant that I've also observed in Asia, and that is in Asian culture, people like to say yes. And they don't mean, yes, I'm going to do what you asked me to do. They mean, yes, I hear what you're saying. And so you do have to get, if you like, get under the skin and understand what that yes really means. And that's to do with human empathy, I guess.
That's a great point. That's true in all cultures, but even more so in Asia, right? Doctor says, take medication for hypertension. Here's your prescription. Yes, doctor. They leave and they toss the prescription in the wastebasket on the way out. So we have to, with a combination of patients being educated to express their beliefs to the physician, and the physicians being open to that. That's really a two-step tandem process that must occur together. It's happening certainly in USA in our work with empathy training for physicians, but in USA, patients are more open to that. In Asia, it's a bigger challenge, but one that is surmountable. And early evidence shows, at least in the more Western parts of Asia, Hong Kong, Shanghai, it's happening already.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Ron. I'm sorry that we've run out of time, but it's great to hear from you again. And you always have some wonderful words of wisdom. So no doubt we'll keep in touch, and I hope to see you again on a future Digimed TV broadcast. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye all.